Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So that's what we do on the KidLit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature, picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels too. Whether you're an adult reading to your inner child or connecting the young readers in your lives with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. Each week, we'll talk to a different children's literature author and discuss their books, their hopes and dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. So, grab a notebook to build your TBR, and let's get to today's episode of KidLit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. I'm Stephanie Affinito, your KidLit loving host, inviting you back to another bookish conversation with a children's literature author. Today, I am so excited to be talking with Padma Venkatraman. This is such a special episode for me, and you likely hear the excitement in my voice because Padma was here before on the very first episode of KidLit Love. She helped me launch my dream of having a children's literature podcast with a conversation about Born Behind Bars. It was a pinch me moment back then, and it feels like it's another one now as we meet again to talk about her newest release, Safe Harbor. This gorgeous novel in verse tells the story of two kids who help rescue a wounded seal. And in doing so, they learn it's okay to show their emotions and they find their own safe harbors. I am so excited to talk to Padma today, so let's get to it. Padma, welcome back. I love saying that. Welcome back to the KidLit Love podcast. I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm so excited for our conversation. I'm also really excited for your podcast, Stephanie. It's been fantastic to see it just blossom.
Thank you.
The way it should.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so we started and you were episode 1. And now I am so excited because you're going to be episode 104.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Thank you for everything that you're doing for kids and for books and for the KidLit world.
Oh, thank you. I couldn't have done it without you helping me kick it off. So such a good day. It's a good day today. So
absolutely.
Let's get caught up a little bit. For listeners maybe who haven't listened all the way back to the first episode, and this is their first time hearing you on KidLit Love, I would love for you to just give us a little sneak peek into you and to your books and just kind of catch us up on what you've been up to since then.
So if you've never heard about me before, I started climbing the stairs as a writer more than 15 years ago now, which is, I can't believe that, but it's a long time. And I say more than 15 because there's 15 plus, and I wonder how many pluses there are. But when I started writing that was, Climbing the Stairs was my first book, my debut novel, my historical fiction, which was based on my family's own history. It's set in India during the Second World War, and I'm thrilled that it's still in print. So that's really exciting. My second novel, Island's End, I feel like that's also about 15 years ago. So I don't know. It was a while ago. That one was actually probably the first novel that brought my oceanography together with my writing. And after that, I had A Time to Dance, which was my first novel in verse. And, I'm not an English professor. I don't know, but somebody who was an English professor told me that was maybe the first ever South Asian novel in verse in English for young people. So that's pretty cool.
That is cool.
And after that came The Bridge Home, which was a global read aloud, and I loved it so. And it opened up a whole new world for me to meet, teachers from all over the world, which is so exciting because, of course, I live in Rhode Island, I live in America. I meet American teachers all the time, but to meet people from all over the world like that was just really such an amazing experience.
Yeah.
And thank you, Pernille Ripp, But
Yes, she was just on the podcast actually talking about the Global
okay.
Reading Aloud this year, celebrating it. And that's actually where
Yeah.
I found you. That is where I found you in your book. So I'm so thankful
Yeah.
for it.
And then after that was Born Behind Bars, where yeah, and you invited me to talk about Born Behind Bars. So if you haven't heard me talk about that, look at Stephanie's first podcast.
That's right. All the way back at the beginning. And now we're here today to talk about your newest, which released just a couple of weeks ago, at least, and when this episode is airing, which is Safe Harbor.
Yeah.
So many words come to mind as I think about this book. It is in verse, and so it is so lyrical. It's it's timely. It's a call to action. It's powerful. It's heartwarming. There are so many adjectives. I think I could keep going on and on about this book. I adored it. I knew I would, but I adored it. And I would love for you to tell listeners in your own words a little bit about what Safe Harbor is about and where the inspiration came from. And I did not mean to make you cry.
You can see me wiping my tears. Uh yeah, all right. But I think I have my voice back. Um so Safe Harbor for me was so many things. I mean, the littlest detail that is not at all emotional, which is where I'm going to start because she made me feel so emotional and I need to get myself back. Is that I was taking a walk on the seashore. I live in Rhode Island, which is the ocean state, and I saw a seal, and it had washed up on the not washed up. It was above the tide line and above the line of the waves, and I was a little worried because where we are, we don't normally see seals on the sandy beach, and all sorts of things can happen to them if they eat the sand and stuff because they eat ice and sometimes they eat anyway. So I was a little worried. I called the marine mammal hotline, and that seal, my seal, if I can use the possessive
You
pronoun
can.
here, was fine, and it went straight back into the water and everything was fine. But you know that we authors like to make things not so fine. And
Right.
so in my head, I started to see a little brown girl, like I used to be a long time ago, finding a seal on the beach. And I loved stories with animals because, among other things, when I was growing up in India, my parents were separated, which was very unusual. Even now, I think it's fairly unusual in India, but at that time, growing up where I was the only kid with separated parents that I knew. So it was really very unusual. And, kids can be a little unkind to each other or a little more than a little kind. So I was bullied a lot about that. And so my refuge, really, there were a couple of different refuges that I had. One of them was nature. I loved to be in nature. One of them was writing poetry,
Yeah.
and the other was music. And all three for my protagonist, Geeta, the little girl who finds the seal in the book. She is being bullied at school. And for her, she loves to be in nature. She loves to write poetry and she loves music.
Yeah.
And she's way better at music than I ever was. I was horrible, but she loves it. And so, all of those things came together. And then I started to think about how I love stories where animals were kind of, played a big part and there was animal rescue or something. And although you see a lot of animal rescue books, most of them have, and certainly when I was growing up, all of them had white centered characters. And I tried to think about an animal rescue book with middle grade, written for the sort of younger middle grade, which is what this book is aimed at. And I couldn't think of one really. I can think of a couple that are like, at even younger age that are sort of just the starting out early reader books, maybe that have a BIPOC character, but not this. And when I went to oceanography school, because that's what I did before I became an author,
Yeah.
I was the only BIPOC female. And I think subliminally, I had an urge to show BIPOC females. And it
Yeah.
wasn't like a conscious thought, Stephanie, but when I saw the seal, Geeta calls the marine mammal hotline, which is what you should do, by the way, if you ever see a marine mammal stranded anywhere. on American shores. And if you're in another country listening in, please do whatever. There must be some kind of stranding network. Call them and find out. Don't go close to the animal and all of that sort of thing. But I was when I started to see that scene in my head, there was a Black female scientist. And then later on, when I was thinking, in retrospect, I was like, oh, of course, because we wanted to center that. And
Yes.
so there's that. And in this book, as it happens, Miguel, who is Geeta's best friend, whom you also see on the lovely pink and turquoise cover.
Oh, the cover is gorgeous. I'm so glad you mentioned that. I was going to bring it up. It just feels safe. Those colors and the emotions. Oh, yeah.
It's so lovely. And yeah, and so he's the kid of an immigrant, and his mom is also a scientist, and Geeta's mom is studying to be a scientist. So there are a lot of, yeah.
I love that. There are so many different layers, I think. And I said in my review, listeners, if you're wondering, I did post my review online, and I said that there were effortless layers.
Yeah,
But
thank you.
because there are so many different layers where readers might find themselves, but they're effortless. You just kind of settle into one or the other, or all of them, depending on who is reading the book. And I loved that these moms, like, these were strong moms. These were moms in STEM. They were getting doctorates in psychology, and they were working at universities. And I loved that. I loved that. Of course, I work in a university, and so that, appealed to me. But I just loved that while there were other things in the story going on that we'll talk about, there were also these mentions of moms who were doing really great things and really working hard at it. So I loved that component of the story.
Thank you. And while we're talking about moms, Stephanie, if I'm not jumping in and getting ahead of myself, or I don't know what you want, I did want to talk about Geeta's mom.
Yes, please. That was my next follow-up, actually. You read my mind.
Because she is a mom with depression. And so I have a family history of depression and anxiety. And I have depression and anxiety that I live with. So I never say I suffer from it like some people do.
Right.
I think I live with it. And one of the things that, feels very hurtful to me, and it comes up a lot in literature, is even today, we have a lot of parents portrayed with depression who are also portrayed as failures as parents. So they're parents who have essentially checked out. The only thing you know about them is that they have left. And I can understand it's a convenient way for a writer of young people to get the parent out of the picture and then show us the brave, strong child.
Yeah.
And I think we've done a fantastic, job these days of like showing young people who have mental illness or, mental health issues and are dealing with it. And it's part of life. We have done that. We have some great books about that, but we are still showing the stereotype, even in books today, which I will never name, some of which I have reviewed well because I love other things about it, or I want to raise BIPOC voices or whatever else it is, which I absolutely want to do. I have yet to meet a wonderful parent with depression in young adult or middle grade literature. And I wanted to show one of them because I think I'm one, although if you ask my teenager, she might have the opposite opinion.
Yeah, that was a striking part of the book for me, because you're right. In other books, it's not usually portrayed in a positive light. And with so many of us right now struggling with anxiety, struggling depression, whether it's a diagnosed kind of condition or just the ups and downs of living, it's here. And it's something that you do deal with and that you keep going anyway. And so to see, well, a couple of things, to see the mom who has confidence in herself that I'm doing what I need to do, and I'm going to get my doctorate, and I'm going to move to another country and give my daughter the best life. But what I love that you did is you gave little sneaks of how. Medication might be an option for some. So is yoga. So is the reading and the writing and the taking the time. And so I thought as I was reading it that readers are getting what they already know, which
Yeah.
parents live with this and kids live with this. And wow, they're like me and it's working. She's doing a wonderful job. So I was so appreciative of that. As well as hearing from the young child's perspective of, well, should I say this? Should I not say this? How do I manage that? But then, no spoilers, but in that finding that safe harbor that I alluded to, she finds a voice in what she's feeling. So just, oh, so many beautiful full circle things with just that one part of the book. That's just one. We haven't even gotten to the other.
Yeah, and thank you for letting me talk about that because I think it's such an important part of the book to me.
Yeah.
And and I didn't even think about that very much, but the more I talk openly about my own, life with anxiety, life with depression, and managing it, you know, it didn't stop me from getting a PhD in oceanography. And I feel like,
Right.
in not saying it in sort of a boastful way, but all I mean is that there's so many people in the world who have done that and or done other things. It didn't stop me from being a mom. And often we see people with disabilities not portrayed as parents, or having fulfilled marriages or fulfilled family lives in some way. For some reason, that's also a stereotype that I really see a lot, and I definitely want to break. Because if we're saying to young people, yeah, you can be a young person with a mental health issue or mental illness, let's also show them that when you grow up, it's not suddenly going to become a problem. You can have a fantastic life filled with love from your spouse. You can have love from your children and give back that love and be happy and joyful too. Because
Yeah.
as you know, it's not, depression is there's so many ways, there's so many facets, and it does not mean you're always in one place.
Yeah. I love that you just said that because in my mind I was thinking of, what a wonderful model to see in the page of how a parent is working through depression and such a way that life is still good and relationships are still preserved. I hadn't quite thought of how we're also showing the reader their future is
Yeah.
just as great
Yeah.
as someone who might not be struggling with that. Oh, I'm so glad you said that. That's beautiful. Mm, that is beautiful. I don't know where to go next. There are so many other things I think that connect to that. Maybe I want to go to the friendship area. We're talking about parents and the relationships between parents. And there's a whole lot about friendship here of starting over, figuring out those new friends, being open, being willing to put yourself out there. What happens when it doesn't go as planned? Do you give that second chance? Do you give that third chance? Is it about you? Is it about them? So many things that I think just middle grade readers live on a daily basis, right? It is such a challenging time figuring out that friend group and all of those things. And I loved how in the book, Geeta, she's so amazing where she's going through some very challenging things. Like she's got some hard things that she's working with, but she has this openness of, okay, I don't like what this person did. I'm sorry that I fell for that trick. I'm not sorry that I gave someone another chance, though. That was a huge pivotal piece. I'd love for you to talk about that whole complexity of friendship in the book.
Sure. So, a couple of things I think went back to my own childhood and being bullied, and sometimes giving people another chance, and then they would not really rise to the occasion and be
Right.
nice. And at one point, I remember feeling really angry with myself and thinking, why am I so, I use the word stupid.
Yeah.
Why am I so stupid that I keep giving people chances? And then I thought to myself, actually, you are not being stupid. You're being nice, and that's okay. And if they didn't take the chance, it's their problem.
Yeah.
And so I think that was really kind of helpful for me to not be down on myself when other people were being down on me in
Yes.
that way.
Yes.
And so I think that came kind of naturally to me that at some point I just realized, hey, there's a difference, you know, and let's separate those two things. And I wanted Geeta to do that too in the book. And I think friendship is, for me also, it is a little hard. I won't again give too much away, but even her friendship with Miguel in the beginning, there's like a little culture clash because
Yes.
one of the things Geeta is dealing with is she comes to America as an immigrant, like I did. Of course, I came on my own when I was 19, so that I was much older, but I did come all the way on my own. But in this case, Geeta comes with her mom because her mom is the one who moves here. And often we see in books that, the parents want to hold on to the old culture. But in my experience, sometimes the roles are reversed,
Mhm.
where the parents actually are so excited about America. This is new. There's so much opportunity, whatever. And they're very positive, and the kid is hankering for the old friends, the old culture. And so that stereotype is also kind of turned on its head in this book,
Yes.
where Geeta is the one who misses, her husband, her grandma, her grandpa, and all of this kind of thing. And is the one who's really struggling with the move in a big way. And sure, I mean, there are layers to, like you said, mom's struggles too and everything. And it's not as though mom is completely fine and dandy in the new place, but she's made the move.
Right.
But Geeta is the one that has been dragged along
Yeah.
uh, and is quite upset about that
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
beginning.
And you're right, without giving spoilers, that very moment that you're talking about, like, my heart, I just felt it in my heart because she so desperately was so excited to connect with this new person, and then when she realized what happened, I felt it. I felt it. I was so glad, given that second chance later, she knew what to do and
Yeah.
kind of opened her
Right.
a bunch of things.
It's always, I like to put a little, I mean, I don't think I like to put, like, I don't like to sprinkle humor on top, but I feel like humor sometimes always comes into my books from who the people are and the
Yeah.
situation. And it's funny, but it's also sad.
Yeah.
And so there's those moments that I love in other books, and I love in my books too, if
Yes.
I'm allowed to say that.
You are absolutely allowed to say that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the ocean life aspect, the seal that they find, all of the wonderful marine facts in here. Like your worlds were colliding in a beautiful way, I imagine, in this book.
Yeah, and Nancy, my brilliant editor. At one point, I just wanted to add, and she's like, "Okay, we have to whittle
We
down
have to
some of,
stop.
we have to stop because we want the book to be a book that younger. Actually, I feel like even a 7-year-old could read it, all the way from 7 to 11, or if you're a 12-year-old and you read it, you'll get different things from it. So, it's a book that certainly can be at the younger end of middle grade or even elementary school. Basically, I think it's an elementary school book. I think second grade, third grade, definitely third, fourth, fifth is probably the best age group for it, which is a little younger than some of my other books. And I think, oh gosh, now that I started talking about the reading age, I got a little bit lost. So you should get me back on track. We were going to be talking about the climate change and the
Yeah.
ocean stuff. And obviously, as an oceanographer, I love ocean
Yeah.
creatures. I could have written an entire book about seals or horseshoe crabs or any of the other creatures that Geeta comes in contact with in the book. But in the book, it comes through very naturally. So I wanted to show the kids as being stewards of the land and taking over that stewardship. And I wanted to do two things. One of them was consciously, I think, at some level, but also subconsciously, I realized that the reason that Geeta plays the flute, the bamboo flute, which is a very simple instrument, is that at some level, deep in my own psyche, growing up in India, in the Hindu religion, we have a picture of divinity, which is Lord Krishna, holding a flute and of animals being mesmerized, right? So, in a way, it can be interpreted in so many ways, but it's also the divine being in all creatures, and music being a way that just sort of reaches out and communicates and brings us all together. And so then I was thinking, of course she was playing the flute, in retrospect. And to her, in a very deep way, there's this kind of a bit of a magical-ish moment where she connects through music. I don't want to say too much again, with nature, let's just say.
Yeah.
But and I think that I wanted that to be there because it's not something that, even though I'm a scientist, that's sort of slightly unscientific. And I wanted to reach into the Indian roots in this case, but also into ways in which BIPOC cultures have reached out and have this feeling of all of us together, or of, the world being one community, of ecology, of all of those things in ways that didn't use the words, maybe ecology or,
Right.
conservation and so on. So while we have the very sort of Western American conservation, trash pickup, and all the other stuff going, there's also this other aspect
Yeah.
to that whole, the other layer, if you will. I love that you said layers, um, of something that is not completely scientific, but is also very a kind of wisdom that we bring to conserving our planet and protecting our planet and every creature that's on our planet,
Yeah.
as well. And in Geeta's case, it begins with this one seal, and then, as you said, her whole world opens up, and her idea of everything, of protecting the world, of our planet, all of that grows out of the urge to help this one creature.
Yeah. And the piece about that I love so much, and I know any reader, any writer is going to love so much, is the role that the library and the librarian and books played in opening up that world for her. Right? It was just this book is a book for readers. When you get to this section, you know exactly what she's feeling. And she starts to learn so much. When she has a question, when she's wondering, she just hits the books. And she doesn't just hit the nonfiction books. She goes into whatever book, whatever genre that can open up her mind to what she's learning, which also ends up being a new way of being and a new way of living, which then opens her real world, which is what I love. Like, books are these magical little portals. So when she ended up in the library and that librarian was helping her, it warms the reader's heart right there.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, librarians and teachers, not to go down that rabbit hole too far, because I don't want to, and it's an uplifting, joyful book, and I want to stay in the uplifting, joyful space.
Yeah.
But they have not. I mean, you have all not had, neither have authors, obviously, and so many others. But speaking of librarians and educators in particular, have been facing so many challenges and such disrespect to their expertise and the ways in which you touch children's lives, you change children's lives, and you save children's lives. And I mean, I have always, I think I probably said that on the first time that we chatted. I say that I became an American because of public libraries. And, it's half joking, but it's half not.
Right.
Because I feel like when I came in, as a new immigrant, just set foot pretty much in America, and I walked into a public library and I was told, you don't need to pay a cent. All these books are yours. I felt like, my goodness, the world of knowledge is open to me. The world of, compassion and literature is open to me. I can do what, and here's this helpful person who doesn't even know me, this helpful stranger who will be there and who will give me access to everything. And if that is not a bastion of our democracy, if that is not one of the pillars, the temples of our democracy, our libraries, and having access to education and to libraries, and having that be a public right
Yeah.
for children is one of the things that I think America should always stand for and respect and love.
Yeah. Oh, I can just feel the emotion coming across the Zoom screen when you talk about this. Can I read a quote? One of my
Of
favorite lines
course.
around this topic. Yeah, your book is full of, highlighted sticky notes, because I love just lifting beautiful lines that I want to save. And I have a couple that I can share here, but the one that is very fitting for the conversation we just had is this one. Opening a book is like opening a door, taking me to a different time and place, into someone else's head and heart. Right? That empathy building machine of a book is just so important. And what the reader sees it does for her immediate situation with the seal, but then her overall life situation is just beautiful.
Thank
It's
you.
beautiful. Mm,
Yeah, and I think the books also have this, way of being very real, because I think young people are very smart and they know what is facing us in terms of climate change today. So it's very upfront and honest, as I have to be as a scientist too, about these things. But it also preserves hope. And I think that's very, very important to me, because I think it preserves hope and it shows, I hope, the young person that adults haven't just created the problem, we are also there to be part of the solution.
yeah.
And I think that's important. I mean, sometimes I think, we have books in which kids are all like, understandably, the focus is just on them doing things. I wanted it to be something where we see also the adults feeding into that, so that they, when I talk to young people, I know that sometimes they are very worried. And I think we did mess up things, but we also have wisdom that we can share with you, and mistakes we've made that you can learn from. We're in this together. We're not absolving responsibility for the mess we created at all.
Yeah.
And keeping that hope alive and also I think, turning it to the positive. So there's that place where Geeta is like, oh my goodness, I'm doing something so small, but yes, those small things count. And I always think, and I have a little thing on my website now, which is about, if you're going to take this into a school and do an activity, let the focus not be on, hey, listen, if you leave the faucet open when you are brushing your teeth and just probably wasting so much water per day or per time, which amounts to so much water waste. Instead, let's even just do the small positive thing. If you change it, and if you don't keep that running, let's look at how much you save.
Oh,
Starting with that, to just put the focus on the positive. And then, of course, there's that very important scene to me where the kids are not talking only about the little things, they're talking about the bigger things that they can and will do. They're planning toward larger changes as well.
yeah. Kids were definitely portrayed as change makers here.
Yeah.
They had that possibility and that potential and that enthusiasm for it. And you mentioned hope. And if there are two words that I think, I started off with a whole bunch of words that made you cry when we started talking, but if I had to whittle it down to two, I would have said the book is about hope and love.
Yeah.
And hope, one of the things that you write about in the book, in some of those scenes where they are doing the work, wondering if one piece of trash being picked up is enough, wondering if one kid is enough, it said they're building hope with our hands. And
Yeah.
I thought, oh my God, it's on a sticky note. We are building hope with our hands. And then at another point, it says in the book, hope is a cork that never stops bobbing on the waves of life's ocean. Love it. It's so beautiful. And that hope combined with the love that first the characters find in themselves, both mom, both Geeta, everybody, and then how that trickles out, whether it's a physical close love or a love that is from afar, the other line that just so beautifully captured things for me was this one. Love is about holding tight with our hearts, but not our hands, right? So we have this hope. We're building hope with our hands, but in reality, this love it's everywhere. It can be felt everywhere. And readers are just filled with that, Padma, when they are done with the story.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a difficult time, in our world. And I think even more than my other books, this is a book that is just filled with joy and love and hope, even though it is. I mean, I like to think all of my books are about things that are in some ways difficult and also filled with joy and love and hope. But I think this one, we talked about the pink and turquoise cover, and I feel like this is a pink and turquoise uplifting book about some very difficult things,
Yes. Yeah.
honestly, but also hopefully.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm so honored to be
Thank
part of
you.
your team that's
Thank
launching it.
you. I am
It's
so excited
incredible.
for you too. I know, and you almost made me feel like we must be getting to the end of our conversation because you started me off crying, and I'm this close to doing it again.
That's a skill apparently I've developed in 100 episodes. So as we wrap up, I would love for you to tell where can listeners find you? Find out more about your books, more about you, your website, social media. Where would you like to point them?
I think probably two places. So I would love to do more school visits. I used to have a very full calendar. I feel like after the book ban thing started, it has dropped off quite dramatically. And I love writing, I have to say, top. But then right after, close second is sharing my work with other people, whether it's, uh, when I did the keynote at NCTE Allen, I had this great big room filled with, I feel like, love and teachers and educators and librarians, and I love speaking to adults. I also obviously love speaking to my target audience of young people and doing writing workshops and all that. So if that's something that interests you to bring me into your classrooms, then the Author Village is the easiest place. You'll have to, scroll down and find me and then click on that link. You can also contact me or find that same link on my website. It's www.padmavenkatraman.com. You do have to spell my name correctly, which a lot of people don't. So it's, Padma, and my last name, all one word, Venkatraman, Venkatraman. So
I will put that right into the show notes as a clickable link too. So open it up, click right on it, get to your website, find out all the ways to contact you. And of course, I'll put a link to the books, your beautiful
thank
books that we
you.
mentioned today.
Thank you.
I wish I could just reach across the screen and give you a big hug of thanks. This was so wonderful. Thank
Thank
you for
you.
coming back and for writing and putting everything out in the world. They matter so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for everything you do. I'm so glad. Yeah, and all of the links actually you can also get through my website. I will say that because once you get to my website, if you go through the menu, you should be able to also get, the Author Village link or anything else. But thank you so much for taking the time, not just for me, but for all your guests and for doing such a wonderful thing for the world of books and kids and literature.
Thank you. Now I'm going to cry. Thank you. Thank you, Padma and listeners. Thank you for listening to another episode of KidLit Love, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the KidLit Love podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes at alitlife.com. And if you want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing, and everything in between to build a life you love. One more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a bookish friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of KidLit Love. Thanks for listening.